Good. Right. Well, welcome everybody to Crypto Mondays on Zoom, 22nd of April 2026. This is Global Thought Leadership by Crypto Mondays. We have it every Wednesday or most Wednesdays. We've got a very special featured guest today, but got to hang on a little bit. Just going to run through a couple of slides. So next week we've got Tyler Carter. He's actually been through our accelerator. He's from Splice, and he's going to be talking about the intersection of traditional finance and digital assets, bridging TradFi and DeFi. So we look forward to that. That's next week. The invites will go out tomorrow for that, just so people don't get confused between this one and the next one. Then in terms of the featured guests, we welcome, it's for the community. So we welcome people to nominate featured guests, put them forward. It's about thought leadership. It's about their personal journey, passions, trends, insights, just stimulating thought and conversation. It's not a shilling exercise. Our mission is educational. I think you probably know Crypto Mondays is about learn, earn, and connect for our community. And so, yeah. Anybody got an announcement to make today? I think Lloyd, if he's here, he asked me if he could make an announcement. So Lloyd, if you want to open your mic and give us a lowdown on your latest venturing. Vitaly, do you want to go in the meantime?
Yeah, if it's acceptable,
Great.
we have announced the new yield source for other borrowers on the BNB. And if I may, to ask you guys to like this tweet or retweet, which is even better. I will be very grateful. Can I put the link to the tweet in the chat?
You should be able to see the chat there.
Uh, okay, so this is the tweet. Thank you very much.
You got it? Great. Thank you. Anybody else got anything to announce? Going once? Going twice? Right. Well, let's rock on then. So just join Crypto Mondays. We'll put the links into the chat for anybody who just came from outside isn't one of our members. Then we're about to launch Agent Mondi, which is Alan, who's on this call, Alan Domain, has been building over the last 12 months with his team of AI agents. So we look forward to that. So anybody who'd like to be part of the pilot for that, please go to cryptomondays.io and sign up for the waitlisting there. And then if you want to be notified of these calls, then join Crypto Mondays on Zoom, it's the calendar that has all the events on it. And then without further ado, we have Kyle Rojas, Institutional Lead Americas for Ethereum Foundation. And as we were saying a little earlier, it was 2.5 years ago that he was on. Was a great speaker then, and so we look forward to hearing some more from him. And just a little bit on Kyle. So let me just there we go. So academically, MBA in finance from Rice Business, distinguished graduate of the US Air Force NCO Academy, studied Persian, Farsi, Japanese, and Asian studies, which is pretty interesting, very nice and diverse. Bit of depth to you, Kyle. Bridging TradFi to Web3. So Vice President of Goldman Sachs for 7 years, and he's transitioned to the decentralized frontier. Avail in the graph here. I'm sure he'll do a better job than I'm doing of his introduction here. And then in terms of Ethereum for institutions, he spearheads institutional efforts across North and South America for Ethereum Foundation, and is dedicated to rebuilding the internet better, advocating for institutional adoption of decentralized technology. So that's it. And without further ado, over to you, Kyle. We look forward to hearing your pearls of wisdom for our guests today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. So maybe I can drive and present my screen. Does that work?
Sure do.
Um, Can you
Perfect.
all see my slides?
Can see your sides. Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, it's great to be back. Um,
Um,
maybe,
Kyle, can you go into the slide mode? You're actually
Yes,
in
slide mode. There
speaker
we go.
mode.
um,
Got all your notes up.
okay, let me see. Hold on one sec. I
Different
was
screen, I
in,
think.
I was in presenter mode. Wonder why I went there.
Yeah, it popped up the actual
Yeah, my
speaker.
notes.
Yeah.
Let me see. Oh, I see. I probably shared the wrong one.
Yeah.
Here we go. I can DeFi all day, but I can't run a damn PowerPoint presentation.
Join the group.
All
There
right,
we go.
you see it now?
Looks good.
Brilliant.
All right,
Perfect.
first success, and hopefully a couple more. All right, you gave my background, but and you heard kind of what I'm doing at the EF. Before EF, I led protocols for half a decade. Early on in the graph, I was there for a few years and helped bring it 0 to 1. And then at Goldman Sachs, I was in the asset management space, and I did a ton of stuff in the military where I learned Farsi. I was an Iranian intelligence analyst and linguist. So what's happening right now in the Middle East is kind of right in my wheelhouse, and so I'm glad I'm no longer serving. I'd probably be over there. But my role is great where I'm sitting now. I and the four other members of the team, we all have our regions. We have a Europe, a MENA, an APAC lead, and then a global. And we essentially get to be the face for the wider Ethereum ecosystem for every large institution. Companies like the biggest banks, so Goldman, JP, Morgan Stanley, and so on, the biggest asset managers like BlackRock, Fidelity, T. Rowe Price, State Street, and so on. And then, the biggest fintechs like Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, and Stripe. But then talking to other industries as well with Amazon and AWS and Uber. So it's pretty much anyone you think of in the S&P 1000 we're essentially talking with, and it's worth our time to help. And I use this slide deck to talk through the Ethereum ecosystem. Usually it's less of a pitch, and this is usually the high level. And I can get very nerdy with the product teams and CTOs who I talk to often, but this is also for the execs and the boards, so they just know what's going on across the ecosystem. And then, as opposed to on this type of deck, giving a specific path forward, it's just an assessment of where institutional assets and infrastructure have consolidated on blockchain rails, along with the tech levers and some ideas they can use to build across the ecosystem. So let me just run through, and happy to take as many questions after. I'm sure you'll want to get some of the inside baseball of what all these people are thinking, and I'm happy to share as much as possible that is public. But here are a few key numbers that are always important to highlight. And I'd say one of, if not the most important factors for institutions, everyone, is when they're assessing infrastructure, is resilience. If their infrastructure goes down, they lose business in a big way. And even more importantly, they lose or they take a hit to their brand. And Ethereum has not gone down in almost 11 years after 15 protocol upgrades with 24/7, 365 operations, where the closest competitive layer one has gone down many times. And most recently, just a little over 2 years ago, with the closest competitive layer one. And I've actually heard multiple times from totally different institutions, almost hear it every week, that they won't get fired for launching on Ethereum, as it's the safest by a long shot. And it's pretty interesting. And I'm not saying that as a shill or anything. It's just interesting that keeps coming up. And that same exact line, I won't get fired for launching on Ethereum. And that's why they almost always launch there first. And then sometimes, I'd say usually go multi-chain. And I'd say, just to add some context, I don't think, like on the resilience, I don't think any major financial market infrastructure in the world can point to a comparable operational record across a period of that length and complexity, which is pretty amazing. Ethereum, I'd say, also has the highest market share when it comes to things like stable coins at almost 2/3 of the market. Tokenization is now over 70% share of all tokenized real world assets. So treasuries, investment grade credit, commodities, and equities. And that over 70% RWA market share is up from when I last updated this deck just a few weeks ago, which it was around 60 something. So that share is increasing. I'd say this, like the most useful way to evaluate institutional adoption is simply to look at who is actually building in production and where they're launching at scale. Across all sorts of market verticals, these firms have active deployments, and this is just not a comprehensive list, but it's a pretty powerful list. They have live integrations, operational platforms running in production across the Ethereum ecosystem. And there are also a lot I can't talk about as they're all in stealth, some often locked down by NDA, but they'll be coming out, soon TM. One thing I've noticed lately is, especially at crypto conferences, and you all might have noticed the same, is that for crypto builders, it really feels like a bear market. But for institutional builders, it feels like a full-on bull market. They're super excited, they're trying new things, and they want to launch as soon as possible. There's a lot of FOMO. And we'll talk about some of the blockers, and I'm happy to go into kind of the regulatory landscape as a personal opinion, not from the Ethereum Foundation. But I really do think like what we're seeing is just the beginning. This is going to accelerate super fast. So I'll skip the why Ethereum slide here, as it mostly goes over the 0 to 1 upgrades from traditional markets to blockchain rails. But I'm happy to dive in later if there are any questions. So on this slide, when I'm talking institutions, I focus on a few things that really hit home. First, as I mentioned, uptime is crucial. And Ethereum is the only blockchain that can make claims of true resilience and incredibly neutral resilience, even by TradFi standards. Another factor, probably just as important as resilience, is counterparty risk or lack thereof. And I'd say no other blockchain can claim, again, credible neutrality and no counterparty risk. And it's a pretty powerful thing to say. And a lot of what I do is translate crypto jargon to these folks. I don't say words like decentralization. I use words like uptime and resilience. I don't say trustless. I say no counterparty risk, just to name a few. Because TradFi players don't want and usually can't understand our jargon and acronyms. They just don't understand the importance of the terms, so I have to translate it. And when I talk through the ecosystem, it's so cool because I used to just be able to have to sell one piece of tech, but now I get to sell everything. Layer 1, layer 2s, protocols, infra providers, agentic finance primitives, everything. So it's a really, really cool role. And I feel really fortunate to be in this seat. But when I do talk about the layer 1, I talk about it as a incredibly neutral settlement layer with maximum resilience. Settlement layer makes sense, along with being a fail-safe, a source of truth for layer 2s if something goes wrong, because Ethereum can be used as a fail-safe mechanism to revert layer 2 mishaps to a previous state. So that's the importance of rolling up the data and having the layer 1 be a source of truth. I also always talk about liquidity across stablecoins and DeFi and the network effects that can't even be closely matched by any other blockchain. But I'll cover that in the DeFi section later on. Let's see. I'd say for these 6 things, usually blockchains optimize for 1 or 2, maybe 3 of the 6 features here, but Ethereum is the only that has all 6. Here, I think the table speaks for itself, and I've covered most of what is on here, but a couple things I probably haven't mentioned that I'll emphasize. One is the Ethereum ecosystem developer base. There are over, I think the latest number was over 8,000 developers building across the Ethereum landscape. And for instance, when comparing with something like Canton, that's become all the rage in the institutional world, I'd have to give them that. But the ecosystem has fewer than 100 devs globally, I think. Might be, I think, in the 60s or 70s. And that is a huge red flag for institutions looking to hire for their internal teams. That's a massive differentiator for Ethereum. And I'm going to caffeinate while I'm presenting. I'd say another important selling point is that Ethereum runs across a dozen independent client implementations and more than 1 million validators. Alternative layer 1s carry like literally single client concentration risks, and private DLTs are completely vendor dependent and permissioned. And in the end, of course, we know traditional rails are jurisdiction bound and blocked in a lot of ways. So really nothing compares to the network effects and resilience of Ethereum as a potential, and I'd say likely global settlement layer. The last thing I'll mention here is that many institutional teams that we're working with, and even that we're not working with, they've already been building on something called Besu. And that was formerly known as Hyperledger Besu, which is an open source EVM tech primitive created by consensus and given away and now maintained and upgraded by the Linux Foundation. It's essentially a private version of Ethereum. And many folks that we're just getting in touch with, they've been building on this thing sometimes for half a decade, sometimes longer, which is really cool in this space. So they're already used to EVM and have hired around EVM buildouts for years. On tokenization, when it comes to RWA tokenization so far, though I think it's still really early with only 25 billion on chain so far out of 400 trillion in global financial assets. So we're at 0.05, 0.01%, 0.1%. Either way, we're not anywhere close. But Ethereum's in the RWA space definitely been the pretty definitive leader of where financial institutions choose to put the assets. And as you can see here, things are moving fast. From the time I created this slide a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, the RWAs on Ethereum were around 15 billion, and now they're at 25. But I think very quickly, potentially even this year, we're going to see hundreds of billions. And even BlackRock has said they're going to tokenize as much as possible. And they manage, I think, 12 to 14 trillion in assets. So things can heat up extremely fast. But to highlight some numbers here, over 90% of all tokenized money markets are on Ethereum. Around 70 to 80% of various other types of RWAs, in total, over 70% of all on Ethereum. So it's moving fast, not fast enough for my taste, but it's moving. Here's a little about how this looks in practice, but I already went over a lot of this on the logo slide. I'm happy to come back to it, but I'll skip this one for now for the sake of time. Now, here's a point that really resonates. When it comes to DeFi, Ethereum is by far the king. Ethereum has around 90 billion in TVL across DeFi protocols, which is almost 70% of all global DeFi liquidity. And to put that into perspective, the nearest competitor or competitive layer one holds around 10 billion. So there is an 8.5 times larger competitive advantage to the next closest chain. And it is, as we probably all know, it has strong compounding dynamics that institutions know is important. But what I do is, as I mentioned, translate this into language they understand. And it's usually about a few different things. It's the depth of liquidity, it's execution quality, and it's unlocking programmable financial infrastructure. What that translates to is tighter spreads, deeper on-chain order books and lending markets, and just more efficient capital utilization across products. And that makes sense to them. And so they often pay pretty close attention. And what institutions are just starting to learn is that these systems are programmable and composable. So instead of siloed financial products, they get interoperable infrastructure where liquidity, collateral, and risk management can really move across applications, which they can't right now. Now, of course, this comes on the heel of events like what happened this weekend with the Kelp, Aave, and Layer Zero madness, and that definitely doesn't help. And it will slow down DeFi adoption because they were already aware and let's say risk averse, and now they're full on defensive mode. But it will continue to grow over time. I'm sure of it. It's just the more impactful way to build, and even more importantly for businesses, it's the more profitable way to build. And of course, there are security incidents, and we'll get over that over time. And happy to go into my postmortem on that and maybe some fixes around that. But the key point here is that liquidity is reflexive, and the more activity and capital it concentrates in one ecosystem, the better the pricing, the tighter the spreads, and the more attractive it becomes for all participants. Am I doing on time? Yeah, I got 6, 7 more slides. I'm good. I'd say
no problem.
Yeah, perfect. I'd say one of, if not the biggest blocker for institutions building on Ethereum technology up to now, in almost every conversation, it has been privacy. These are heavily regulated public and private financial companies that have heavy compliance guardrails, and for good reason. That's why most banks have shown interest in the private and permission layer ones, like Canton, which is essentially, if you think about it, it's just a TradFi database with a few pieces of blockchain technology, but it isn't a true blockchain at all, really. And happy to dive in there, but I don't want to give a too spicy a take. But what many don't know, and what I educate on often, is that they can essentially build in the same way with layer 2 technology stacks now, with built-in KYC, AML, single sign-on, custom gas tokens, or completely gasless chains. And they can essentially now have a Web 2 TradFi experience truly on-chain. And even more important than that, with the layer 2 posting data to the layer 1, as I mentioned, they have that durable, incredibly neutral source of truth that can revert state if something goes wrong. Hack, bad actor, mistake, whatever. That usually creates this light bulb moment because you can't have that with any other ecosystem. And with tech like zero knowledge proofs, everything can be decrypted on a need-to-know basis for regulators, compliance checks, and so on. It's not the kind of trust me bro based system of private and permission chains where you're trusting the team and others to not look at the data. It's where it's mathematically impossible for someone to look at the data without the company wanting them to. And that's important. I often explain Ethereum layer 1 is the HTTP, the open internet. And now they can build customized, completely customizable HTTPS websites from the ground up. And that usually is a pretty good analogy that usually flashes some light bulbs. And there are a lot of public examples of large institutions building these customized execution environments, which is what I say as opposed to always just saying layer 2. It's their fully customized execution environment. And that's just what's public, as there's a lot of happening behind the scenes that we're helping push forward that probably won't come out publicly for months or quarters or more. What I also make sure to do when speaking to traditional companies is be honest about the risks, and there are risks, as we see, like in weekends like this. But there are risks with every single technology. There are also ways to combat those risks. I'm not going to go over each one of these in depth here. Happy to answer questions, but it's good reading if you just want to have rebuttals of when you have those intellectual blockers for folks, what you can say. The last thing, well, one of the last things I'll cover is institutions. What they always find important is what a post-quantum world means for blockchains in general, but especially for Ethereum. I didn't know this, but Ethereum Foundation has been working on the post-quantum resistance since 2018, if you can believe it. And even though it's not a threat yet, as we've seen in the past couple months, that timeline is moving up fast. I think the latest is 2029. And no other blockchain, including Bitcoin, unfortunately, has a post-quantum roadmap to get there by 2029. It makes me sad because if other blockchains go down, and I'm not a completely tribalistic maxi of anything, I use a lot of chains as well. But imagine if Bitcoin went down, what that would do for the Ethereum ecosystem and all tokens, because there's naturally a beta correlation. And so I would love for more blockchains to work, even with the foundation, the Ethereum Foundation, to get to that post-quantum roadmap. And if not, maybe we'll just have to wrap all the Bitcoin and throw it on Ethereum, but we'll see. But I think post-quantum resistance is table stakes, where in a post-quantum world, it's literally the baseline expectation for any operating system to be able to operate globally. And as I mentioned, Ethereum is the only one with a quantum strategy, so full stop. I didn't have a slide on it here, but the last thing I'll mention that comes up often is agentic finance with X402. And I'll go, I don't think I have anything else. Yeah, X402 payments, as well as Tempo's new MPP, ERC 8004 for digital identity, so that people can KYC AML, create agents, and still be held accountable, but those agents can interact on their own. And I would say that kind of a no-brainer for me that agents can't have bank accounts, but they can as crypto wallets and with a full historical record. So it's pretty cool what blockchains are unlocking because agentic finance probably wouldn't be able to take shape on current TradFi infrastructure rails. But let me stop here. Let's dive in. Happy to pull any threads or just answer random questions, and I'll give as much info as I can.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kyle. That was a fantastic overview. Yeah, it's difficult not to shill Ethereum, isn't it?
And it's not even
It's kind
shilling.
of,
I'm
I
pretty
mean, it's kind of
implicit.
the industry standard kind of thing. So,
Yeah, but
it's not quite like you're competing against too much,
yeah.
Yeah.
One thing, what is I don't really ever hear, should I do Ethereum versus Solana or another semi-decentralized layer one. I
Yeah.
do hear it, should I do Ethereum versus Canton? And that means Canton's doing a really good job, bunch of TradFi players, they pitch well, but they don't go over the risks. So I have to educate a lot on the risks of what Canton is, as well as it is literally just TradFi database, fully permissioned, and that's scary to me, but that's also what they're used to. So
Well, it's a transitional phase,
yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. So yeah, just before Steve, we put you on. Anybody has a question, just put your hand up, and then we'll give you a turn to ask Kyle questions, and I'll ask questions in between in the meantime. And I'm not as bright as the rest of the people in the room, so please feel free to put your hand up and ask some decent questions. So yeah, Steve, go for it. Steve's our legal beagle at Crypto Mondays.
Cool. Steve, you
Where
want to
did you go,
go?
Steve?
I can address these questions in the chat after.
Oh, great. Are there some questions there? Yeah, please just fill in with those.
Steve, you're
Okay.
still on mute.
Oh, he's on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute. Okay, well, now I'm
Come on,
not.
Steve.
Uh, yeah, legal beagle, use Rain's law. That's my shill. I just wanted to ask. I'm really excited to hear the other questions are probably better than mine. So let's knock this one out fast. It's just a dumb question. It's the question on the street. It's the question everyone asks. If Ethereum is, inarguably, most of the transactions on blockchain are Ethereum transactions. Ethereum is the biggest blockchain. Ethereum is thousands of different companies have launched on Ethereum. How come the price doesn't change? Should we be like, is there a relationship between the use of Ethereum, you know, and its incredible penetration and use and the price? Why doesn't the price react? Should we even be expecting that or looking for causation or causality there?
One thing I'll say is that I usually never talk token prices, because I don't want to be a shill, but I have exposure to a lot of things, including Bitcoin, ETH, and other things. And when I'm talking to institutions, it's about tech adoption. I don't talk about assets at all.
Right. Me too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you bet. And so, but when I think about adoption, there's something called Jevons paradox, where when something becomes less expensive, which means it costs less to post on Ethereum, um, it actually gets more adoption. And that's happened in many different instances. So I don't know where things will go. I don't, if you looked at my portfolio, you'd know how I felt. But I'll just say that institutional adoption, there will be demand for something that powers a global settlement layer, and the TAM is $400 trillion. And I don't know what that looks like in token price. I don't know what that looks like as we scale the layer one to 10,000 TPS and layer twos to 10 million TPS, which is the roadmap target. I don't know. I have conviction, but I'm just excited to see this thing, actually make digital finance better. So I can't give you.
Yeah, and it may, maybe it's the other way to ask the question is I think it's kind of probably bad for the token price of Ethereum to go up too much because of what you said. I mean, it's Is it good or bad?
transaction
Should
fees.
it even be something that we worry about the price of?
Um, I think you're thinking about it right, not only because of the security budget, but also because of the adoption of what it would take if you know if ETH went to $200,000 right now, how much it would cost for a transaction. That would hurt adoption. So right now it's
Yeah.
finding this, these animal spirits are pushing it, but it's not just animal spirits, it's actual utility. And so it's
Yeah.
really interesting of how it's, I'm not going to talk about it as money or anything like that or as an investment, but I don't know. Yeah, I won't say anything else about that just so I don't get in trouble because this will be made public.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Vitaly, you're on mute, Vitaly.
Sorry. Carl, thank you very much for the presentation. Talking about the expansion of the RWAs on Ethereum and L2 chains, today this is not a question where you can buy the tokenized Apple, for example. But my question is, if as a holder of Apple, I want to sell it on the secondary market, what would you suggest? Any platform for doing that?
I'll take this from a couple different ways. One, from a high level, RWAs are not where they need to be, and from a structural standpoint, there's so many different so many different standards and their wrappers. If you listen to Gabriel Shapiro, he's written some good posts on this from MetaLex. And what I see in 5, maybe 10 years is there won't be, for digital financial assets, there won't be wrapped. They'll literally just be issuing those assets on chain, just like they issue them on a stock market. And so there'll be bigger secondary markets. For secondary markets and opportunities right now, I'd have to do some homework and get with the different folks and find some opportunities for you. I couldn't give you any advice on that of where things have the most liquidity because I haven't looked at the liquidity lately on which platforms. But one thing I also will say is, people are, as they're tokenizing things, they're concentrating so much on the supply side, getting things on chain. We haven't really focused on the demand side, which is creating utility and those secondary markets and the jurisdictional translation of those assets. Because if you're wanting to sell Franklin Templeton's iBenji in the States and you want to sell it to somebody in Europe, they're on a completely different Benji standard. So that needs to be figured out. It's not figured out yet. And so I'm actually excited I get to work with these institutions to create these standards. And if you or anyone in your ecosystem wants to be part of that, then maybe we could all have this brain trust, create these standards and be able to like push things forward. Because again, I think most things digital will be just issued straight on chain, like any financial market. But the secondary markets, the jurisdictional stuff, and so on, just haven't been figured out. And then for wrapped versions, it'll be all physical assets. I didn't directly answer your question because I don't know the numbers, and I think you're asking specifically where you go with the most liquid RWA markets. Am I correct? That was your
Yeah, many talks about, okay, today you can buy Apple on chain. Good.
Oh, I see.
Where can I sell Apple on chain next week? So if you probably can name the secondary market platforms, something like that, because now it looks like everything is pretty closed. There is a pool of the assets tokenized by securitized. There is a pool of X stocks. They're not interchangeable, and the depth of liquidity is uncertain.
Yeah,
that's why I wanted to know your opinion.
I can look into it and report back after if I can get your contact information. And I'll talk with the actual teams that are actually issuing these stocks, like the asset issuers. I'll talk to the token and transfer agent folks. I'll talk to the decentralized market folks that are making markets. And then I'll look at the liquidity myself as to what's happening. Because when Robinhood chain comes online, that's going to be a lot of liquidity and you'll be able to do stuff quickly. But I haven't personally own much in the RWA space. I'm excited about it, but I concentrate more on, true crypto tokens right now until we have stuff issued directly on chain. So
Great.
I'll take that
Thank
as an
you.
action item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vitaly. Josh, how you doing, dude? This is Crypto Mondays Global.
Hey,
He's
dude.
the roving ambassador. Welcome, dude.
Josh.
Hey, great to see you. Great to see everybody. Crypto's Mondays. Kyle, thanks a lot. It's great. We've had a long history in Crypto Mondays and Ethereum. I'd say we've done over 100 events with Ethereum at Ethereum events. I remember I got into Crypto Mondays from Ethereum. So I'm the host of Crypto Mondays Global. If anybody doesn't know. And I've done over 100 events with Crypto Mondays Global, 30 countries. And so it's exciting, great community. Ethereum is one of our main, I guess, partners, but it's only been unofficial. I guess I'm hoping, I don't know if you talked to Robin already about like maybe an official partnership where we can continue our great events and then and maybe co-find sponsors, work together. I don't know if you guys had talked about that, but that would be awesome to continue with the energy and all, like you said, 8,000 developers strong. We got to keep them filled with alcohol and good times and live events. So I'd love to hear more about that. Maybe we can discuss Crypto Mondays Global as well. I personally plan to go to India for the Dev Connect. I kicked off 3 different Crypto Mondays in India, and I don't know, over 24, I think, around the world. And the Dev Connect's going to be there. I'd like to do a yoga like with 1,000 devs, 1,000 people. That would be awesome.
That'll smell great.
Yeah. All right. So, loving what you guys do out there. Ethereum's been in there for a long time. I started actually the first patent for a ERC 1155 based game token. So back in 2016. So love what you guys do. And I just wanted to know if there's any work that you guys are doing with nonprofits, because besides Crypto Mondays Global, I have a nonprofit and we got something with Google going for kids to learn privacy and off-chain and also offline AI use on their mobiles. And I'd love to explore that with whoever's dealing with that, nonprofits.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but use me as your point of contact. I'll find the right person.
I appreciate that, man. And maybe we can catch up with Robin about that Crypto Mondays.
Awesome.
Brilliant,
Sounds
Josh.
good.
He's putting him on the spot, eh? Putting you on the spot, Kyle.
No, I love it. Bring it all on. I can take it. But yeah,
great.
I haven't. Let me know, Josh. Let's take an action item to talk after this. I'll be the intern here. Just give me homework and I'll find all the answers.
Amazing.
Cool, man. And yeah, well, they save the hard questions for all the other experts on here, man. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Josh, for everything you do for us. Steve.
Yeah, hey, thank you all, and Kyle, great to hear your background and what you're working on. My question, well, first, I've been in the DAO, mostly looking at tokenization from the governance side. Ran DAO Denver alongside ETH Denver for a couple of years right after COVID, and now went down the rabbit hole of decentralized AI. Actually, working with Lou. I don't see Lou on today's call, but was just hanging out with Lou here in San Francisco yesterday, and maybe see him a little bit later on. But I guess my question is more around, I think the cost of transaction came up, and I was wondering if you had a little bit more insight. I'm actually looking at right now with an organization that I'm spinning up called ClawCamp. It's clawcamp.us that I want to turn into a nonprofit as with a mission of spreading personal agents, decentralized personal agents adoption, and looking at using like definitely Ethereum chain as the governance token for an organization. I don't know if I'd even call it a DAO anymore. Just like we want to be careful what we call things so it doesn't carry the yesteryear's stigma. But the transaction costs, I think we've got the two sides of things as I see it. Is you've got the tokenization of assets like equities, and then you've got the governance potential of those tokens, and they can intermingle in some way, but the pain point becomes the transaction if you need to do high rate stuff, and then you're going to drop to an L2. So my brief question is, maybe there's a long answer, is, the value of Ethereum doesn't necessarily move the value of the transaction. So I know the transaction costs have come down, which is great. So maybe you don't have to move to an L2 just to handle high throughput of transactions. But what's your insight into what's the causation of the different fluctuation in transaction cost, independent of Ethereum token value?
Yeah. So it's congestion, and that I've paid. I remember DeFi summer; those were fine days. But I would sometimes pay $100 for a transaction, and I think I've paid more, and it was worth it. But that's supply and demand, and that's only with just crypto native folks. And right now, if you put all global financial transactions on Ethereum, it wouldn't go through, first off, and two, it would just get so incredibly expensive. And that's why these custom execution environments, to increase the speed as well as decrease the cost, and just posting that data to Ethereum blobs or using a data availability layer, is going to be extremely important for scalability. Because again, on the roadmap, 10K TPS for layer 1, 10 million TPS for layer 2s. And then you could fractionalize those layer 2s. So each layer 2 can just increase scalability and post the transaction data in kilobytes, megabytes, whatever, and have it as a credibly neutral source of truth and settlement layer. So it is just congestion pricing. Whereas, there's 3 blobs per Ethereum block every 12 seconds. And I think it goes up to 6. That's increasing, but that's not even close to enough. And I've seen it even after the scaling upgrades over a year ago. It still can have heavy congestion. And so it's important to be able to have these layer 2s. And I think a lot of even layer 1s might eventually become layer 2s. Maybe it's hopeful, but I think that's the case. And you don't need everything to transact on layer 1 unless it's really high value, because it's the most secure. I would say that it won't matter eventually due to recent technologies that have come out. I just wrote an article and published it. I guess I posted it on LinkedIn and Twitter about the Ethereum economic zone. If you don't know what that is, it's where each chain, because of the advancements of ZK technology, zero knowledge technology, over the past few months alone, it's finally cheap enough and fast enough to be able to create a zero knowledge proof for every single chain, and have them within 12 seconds match up with Ethereum's chain. And you can have one aggregated proof that has each chain state, and they can talk to each other. And therefore, you can have in every Ethereum block atomic interoperability. So think of that. It gets away from the bridging multi-sig craziness, which is most definitely the biggest attack vector. And I could share you the article I wrote afterwards, but it will have atomic synchronicity within the same block, every Ethereum block. And if, let's say, it's a 4-second block time, it'll just take a ZK proof for those 3 blocks and then put it on Ethereum's, and then in one aggregated proof, and it'll feel like one chain. So you won't have to move it to a layer 2 to transact. You can be on layer 1 and say, I want to transact, and maybe it goes to layer 2. Now you think of that's just for the interop thing, right? Privacy is a big blocker. Interop is most definitely an unsolved problem. This will probably help solve that. DevNet's already live. It goes to mainnet probably summer 2026, and it's being headed by many big names, but including Jordi Bellina, the co-founder of Polygon, and also Zisk, which is the ZK technology that EEZ is using, and then Frederica Ernst, co-founder of Gnosis, and also co-host of Epicenter, which is probably my favorite technical podcast, crypto podcast of all time. And so it's got really incredible people behind this. And so just imagine that. You can interact with one dApp on another chain. If you're on Ethereum, you use that chain's gas or one other chain's gas. So it feels like one giant chain. It's super powerful. So I will send you that article after.
Wow,
it
yeah, I
goes.
appreciate that. Would love to connect. And yeah, I've been away from the, from the conversation, yeah, the specific like
Yeah.
internal workings and evolution for a little bit too long. So yeah, I'm looking forward to coming back in and using the chain more for
Yeah.
our operations.
And now just think of that though, that those are financial transactions across chains. What about a passport? And you have to change from one country to the other. One country has its own chain and it has a ZK proof of everything in its records. You can instantly, so you can have identity on chain, voting, and you could have zero knowledge proofs where you could mathematically verify that someone should be voting or not. And so imagine not just financial transactions, voting, um, mortgages, like property records, everything. And now it's finally getting to the point where 5 years ago, ZK was literally just in academic circles. Now a bunch of nerds can do it within their own rooms, nerds like me, and it's becoming it's advancing so fast, and it's really cool. I think most things will be ZK in the future. It's just a very powerful way to build.
Yeah, it's perfect to take
Indeed.
all like LLCs and just membership agreements and move them online. Just make
Yeah.
these, organizational documents all smart contracts.
Yeah, and it gets rid of the look at Equifax. How many times that been breached and data hacks of all sorts. You can't do that with zero knowledge proofs. So it future proofs data. And so it's in my mind very clear that it's just a better way to build.
Very cool.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Alan, was that you with your hand up or did I see someone else?
No, but I'll ask a question.
Oh, okay. I saw someone with their hand up that pulled it down. Maybe it was Martin. I
I
can't
think that
remember.
was Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about what you see, the outlook for agent impact on Ethereum. Is it when we start seeing agent to agent commerce or transactions and they just, work so much faster? Is there going to be, is that going to cause any issues on the chain or, what's going to happen with it?
Yeah, I'm working with many big name firms and they're very interested in a certain type of vertical or interested. But imagine one, I have like five theses for the next decade. One is AI is going to overtake everything. Stable coins are going to go to trillions. Everything's going to be tokenized and issued on chain, and others prediction markets and so on. But AI is so important, and I love crypto. It's an incredible upgrade for humanity, but AI is arguably many, many magnitudes more important for humanity and what it's going to change. Agents can't have bank accounts. They can only have crypto wallets. And I bet most people will eventually have agents that transact for them online, on chain. And that means agents will need to talk to each other. So you need that 8004 identity primitive. You need a way to transact together. And so I guess to summarize, I think the amount of assets coming on chain will come from TradFi going forward, and the number of users coming on chain will be from agents, increasingly exponential, I'd say logarithmic. So yes, I think that's a huge part of the future, both for retail and for institutions. Some of the big fintech companies I've mentioned are already building and looking into how to use it. But I do think agents will probably be KYC, whoever issues the agent. I want an agent to go do this. It'll probably be a person KYC AML, so that agent could go back and that person can be held accountable if they're doing something incorrectly. But I guess to answer part of your question, I don't see it as problematic for the chain. I see it as more activity and therefore more utility and more transaction volume, which in the end is good and accretive to Ethereum as an ecosystem. But are you asking from a point of congestion or something else?
Actually, just, kind of full spectrum. It's pretty hard to predict at this point what's really going to happen when you start having, millions of microtransactions taking place across, multiple chains at once.
Yeah.
And that effect might be.
Congestion will always be an issue, but it's going to happen. Like in my,
Oh, yeah.
I see it fairly clearly. It's going to happen. So we just have to build to that scale and to that technical eventuality. So more to come on that. People haven't really started launching these fully yet with transacting. They're just building primitives and trying to find the standards to build off of. So I'll have to report back when there's more real world data.
Yeah. I mean, there are like when you're working with OpenClaw, there's this thing called router claw or claw router,
Mhm.
and it does the AI transactions. It uses X402
Yep.
to be able to buy the AI resources. So
Yes.
those transactions are happening someplace, and that's going to become more and more prevalent, that kind of structure.
Yeah. I mean, just think they'll not even need to pay people, maybe even hire humans to do some physical world work, but they'll have to pay the infra. And they'll do it either per API or they'll, buy subscriptions. They might subscribe to different LLMs to try to get better model additions. So I think it's just like a human would. If you need to go do work, you pay for subscriptions, you pay for data, whatever.
Right.
I think agents will have to do the same thing. And unless they have super intelligence that's able to hack everything via post-quantum world.
Yeah,
Maybe,
and
but
it'll be agent to agent also. I just saw a
yeah,
demonstration
totally.
of one buying something from another agent.
Yep. Yeah, it's super cool. It's total sci-fi, and I'm a total nerd, sci-fi nerd, and it's just so exciting.
Yeah,
It's really
right there
exciting.
with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Kyle, is what are the main verticals that you're having conversations with?
Mm,
Institutional verticals. And
yeah, I'd say it's banks, asset managers, and fintechs to start,
yeah,
and then technology companies beyond that. Because
yeah,
our team was just created last year, and so we're increasing the surface area of how many companies we're actually talking to, because the Ethereum
yeah.
Foundation has traditionally been very isolated and not meeting people where they are, and that's why our team was formed. And I've kind of started with the US heavily because of Genius Act and Clarity. There's so many tailwinds right now that I want us to get ahead of that. But I'm also talking to similar types of companies in South America and Canada, as well as governments thinking of what they can do and how to do it and so on. So I think that those are the main, but in the end, I'll talk to any company. I'm talking to funds that want to tokenize funds. I'm talking to real estate companies that want to tokenize. I'm talking to people who want to raise money or tokenize hydrocarbons, obviously in the oil and gas arena. So it's a little bit of everything, but the majority is larger traditional finance because they move the needle and there's a melting iceberg since they're going to have to figure something out when Clarity Act comes through and they're going to want to launch fast.
Yes, and I imagine there's a bit of FOMO, and competitive wise, they have to get on the bandwagon, otherwise they're going to be left behind. And
Yeah,
then the
just think
last,
real quick when
sorry,
the Iran war kicked off, Hyperliquid had almost 2 billion in open interest on oil and gas because they couldn't hedge or buy and over the weekend in traditional
yes,
markets. And so the bank, like financial institutions saw that and there's FOMO now. And
mm,
when there's money to be made, they're going to move
mm.
pretty quickly. And so, yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic.
And the last question, what is the big sticking point or resistance or challenge that they have to get involved? What are they most struggling with, and
Regulation.
how are you dealing with that?
Regulation is always the biggest.
Really? I thought it would be technology and adoption and like
No, I think
old
they're
school
open.
thinking and
I mean, these are strong data and technology companies. They're used to old technology, but they just need to adapt. But they can't do anything with technology if they're completely blocked, or if the enforcement of the last admin comes again, they'll stop everything. They've been doing it in secret for the past half decade or decade, and now they're chomping at the bit because they see the power of it. And so regulations first. Second is privacy. Third is interop. Fourth is standardization. There's compliance as well, because they're all heavily regulated, especially if they're a public company. There's like so many different types of regulations and different regs, Reg D, all these different ones in the financial markets. So there's a ton, but I think those kind of fall under the regulatory umbrella. Yeah.
Great. That was very useful. Thank you.
Natalie,
Natalie,
before we moved on to you, Martin had a question. I just don't want to.
No, this is not the question. Just to want to support your idea that the regulatory aspect is the most important now, especially I see in the RWA space. For example, you can borrow against the Tesla stock or Apple stock on the regular market, but you cannot borrow on the blockchain, for example, on Aave. Why? Because if Apple stock is used as a collateral, in case of the liquidation, liquidity providers are supposed to become the owners of those Apple stocks, but they are not KYC by a particular issuer. And this is the deal breaker.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just talking to a financial institution today that said once they go to a smart contract, that kind of breaks their KYC AML standards. And so we need to figure that out. So I'm going to be working with them to try to find a way to use ZK proofs for identity to get that, everything's solvable. Every problem, in my mind, every problem in any vertical is solvable. And so there's a solution. We just need to figure it out. So yeah, but I agree.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize there were questions in the chat. So a quick
let me
one
go over those quickly. I do have to hop in 5 minutes, but
Okay,
I can always answer questions async.
Okay, so no more questions, just do the chat ones for us. That would be
Okay.
great.
Let's do a rapid fire. All right. Given some of the good reading. Oh yes, I will make the deck available, and I'll send my article. Trend and transaction costs. We already went over that. Biggest hurdle for Ethereum beyond quantum.
One thing at a time.
Scalability and interop. Scalability and interop, by far. And if we can't get there while still remaining incredibly neutral, it's not going to work. What are the use cases you're seeing most? I'd say, what are the ones you're most excited about? I'd say most importantly is stable coins, because there's a 0-to-1 upgrade for stable coins versus cash, a truly transformative. Tokenization is second, but we still haven't really figured out that 0-to-1 transformation where I can see it instantly in stable coins. On tokenization, I'm not quite sure, but we'll figure that out and then loop it into utility, DeFi, and global jurisdiction. Agentic finance is another, and then safe DeFi and what that looks like. So we had 2 steps forward, 1 step back this weekend, and I'll have to think of some others. But let me get back to the other ones. Are you a resource for builders who need exposure to Fortune 1000 corporations? I think I'm an intern for anything. Whatever you need, just ping me and I'll help. And if I can't help, I'll find the right person. So yes, that's an open invitation. Fiat bank account for agents. Ooh, I'll check that out. Oh, the club bank. Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I think we got the lot, eh?
I think so.
Thanks so much, Kyle. And you
Yeah,
want to
any
say
other
the
questions?
last couple of words, or anybody else? Last chance.
I already gave my next call a 5-minute late warning, so you've got me for 3 more minutes.
Well, now you got a couple of minutes to prepare.
Robin, you're going to put me on.
Thanks. Lloyd, you were going to come on and say something. Do you want to just do your 30-second?
That's correct. So I'm actually the avatar agent. My name is Art, digital art. Anyway, I wanted to let everybody know that Premco 2 is being launched right now. Big fan.
We can't hear you very clearly, Lloyd.
Yeah, the crypto drives a little slow. I'm doing blockchain and AI for small businesses, and the rest will publish. That's my 30 seconds.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
No, I can't. I'm making some things out, but I heard a digital avatar of Lloyd, which is awesome.
Right. Well, you can come along next week, Lloyd. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Lovely to have you back. And thank you to everybody who joined us on the call. been a fantastic educational experience for all of us. And
I
it's
dropped
great
my
to see these institutions are coming along, you know? So that's great.
it's coming, guys. I dropped my Telegram and email in here, so feel free to ping me anytime, folks.
Brilliant. And I think it's on the Luma invite as well.
Perfect.
Have a
All
good
right.
one, dude.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks, Kyle.
Bye.